One of the best parts of model railroading, or any hobby for that matter, is sharing your journey and experiences with others. It's socializing, it's important. And there's no better a place to prove that point than the Models and Hobbies chat on our Discord server. It's by far the most active chat. But not everybody's on the Discord server. Some people don't use Discord. Some don't know our server exists. Some don't like big servers. Whatever the case, I don't want to force people to join the Discord to join the fun, but with how much joy and creativity we all share in this hobby, I want to give as many people I can a spotlight to share their passion. And, well, I've got a YouTube channel. What better a place to showcase than a video for the whole internet to see? Today, we're not looking at my models, we're looking at yours. Now, last time we did one of these showcases, we got 22 submissions. This time, we got 80. So, just as a little reminder, if you don't see your submission in this video, that's because the showcase has been split into multiple parts to spread out the workload. Speaking of which, a few community members actually volunteered to help with this video. I'd like to thank Dee, RPG, and Katie S for their contributions towards this showcase. They've each taken a bit of the workload off of my shoulders, making this project much less of a logistical nightmare. With that all said and done, let's dive straight in. Let's see what you have today. To start, we have Cat Mongo. You may remember them from a previous video in this set of showcase entries. They had a model that they forgot to upload any photos for. Well, that's been remedied, so enjoy this 210-4 plus 410-2 Big Boy Garrett. I want to say this is cursed, and to be fair, it totally is, but it's also surprisingly well done. My one suggestion, though, is to maybe make that front cheese slope black like the rest of the engine rather than gray like the smoke box. Up next is Katie S. This is Luna Creek and Western Railroad No. 1, a small, no-nonsense 262T purchased as surplus in 1917 after the war, with her cab damaged in an explosion and replaced by shop crews. Although there was a bit of trouble in the project, I'm quite happy to admit this was really fun to do. It turned out quite well for a first time messing with paints and wood kits. Yes, more trenchies, more trenchies. I love to see these out in the wild. Glad to hear you're enjoying painting. I love to see people trying their hand at this and learning something new. Next up is from Gandandy Goat. Here is my custom model of a fictional Gulf Coast Central 242 Patriot class locomotive. I built this model on a plain Jane Lionel Scout shell and chassis that I heavily modified. I'm working on a show centered around goats in the 1950s proving their worth on a small branch line, and I needed a small but fast locomotive to be the main engine. With this 242, I figured the original shell was a little plain and bare, so I've had a great base to add details such as a high-mount headlight, longer cowcatcher, handrails, a separate whistle and bell, driver connecting rods, flying number boards, dynamo, bits of plumbing between the engine and tender, custom brake shoes and sand line, custom cab roof, custom-made cab curtains that I hand-tied and folded, custom cab interior, and a custom railroad livery to match what a 1920s-era Gulf Coast steamer looked like. The tender is a heavily modified American Flyer tender on Lionel trucks with a custom coal-load, doghouse, and some other little bits and bobs. All of this is to hopefully become my show's main engine, number 242, nicknamed Clyde. She used to be a premier passenger engine, but as trains have gotten longer and larger over the years, she's been relegated to branch line and switching duties. I do still need to add decals, but I think she's at a point where I can present her to you. She runs like a top, and overall I'm proud of taking a stock standard Lionel model and showing what a lot can do with very little supplies and endless ideas. I used to have one of these as a kid. Holy alewife, that's not the same thing. I refuse to believe it. It really is true that the most important part of modifying and upgrading your trains is just dedication and a couple of spare parts. You did a pretty good job here. This looks gorgeous. Following that, we have Nate Valley Works. Here is my newest 3D print loco. There's some sort of track inspection or maintenance of way engine, which I modeled using Tinkercad. They fit on an old lifelike 060 chassis that I've had lying around for a while, and it's the smallest functional chassis that I own. Derp Face, as I've been calling them, is obviously unfinished. I would still like to paint them properly and make one more improved version of the shell before I can call them complete. Also shown is a kit-boshed 282. My father originally got her thinking she had a good motor for another engine that I have, but the motor that she came with was melted as solid and was not even close to the right size. I was originally going to put her on the scrap line with some of my other broken engines, but I decided that I wanted to try to make an engine of my own. So I've been stealing parts off of other engines and putting them on her. The two main donors are a Model Power Pacific that bent its rods, and an old 264 Suburban locomotive. She's still a work in progress, but I'm proud of how she's turning out in these early stages. Those are just some of the many projects I've been working on. I've got a few more 3D print things in the works and a bunch of other stuff too. You might have noticed the Precision Schedule Railroad yard on my floor. It's not permanent, but I like running long trains sometimes, and this is how I do it. Overall, I've been having a great time working on these projects, and I hope to keep making more. You know, I first thought this was HO scale since there was no good frame of reference for size here, but those are Rapido couplers I see, so this is N, right? Previously thinking this was HO, I was gonna ask if you were going to make the windows hollow on a future print. Considering this is N, I think the windows are fine being blocked out, but also, holy cow, that print looks good for the size. Those print lines must be tiny. It also looks like the Mikado that you have there is an old Kato model. If so, pro tip as someone who used to own one as a kid, that drawbar is a fragile beast. Be careful with it or you're going to have more troubles than just a broken motor. Next up is Mr. Railroad Runner. This is Mid-Michigan Railroad number 24. I grew up seeing this locomotive every day near my house. As a result, I've always wanted to build this engine in 1/8 scale, and recently I got the chance. The engine is being built at a private railroad in Michigan, not too distant from 24's old stomping grounds. The locomotive will weigh approximately 600 pounds and will be powered via 6 8-volt golf cart batteries. It has an 8-horsepower electric motor with a drive shaft attached to the trucks. I'll likely give the engine ESU Loc sound with some details recorded from the real 24. I also plan on modifying the kit for this to more closely match the 24. So far, I've only had to make the shortened side skirts for the fuel tank, but I also plan on chopping the nose down and leaving a seam line just like on the real deal. Likewise, I'll be making the anti-climbers, lift rings, and marker lights that the real engine has. Once finished, number 24 will be our power for events this year and should hopefully perform quite well. She'll supplement the Eddy Creek and Alger number 4, which I showed off in a previous showcase. Can I even call this a model at this point? I mean, yes, technically I can, but it just feels wrong. I'm both impressed and terrified of how much work goes into a project like this. Though, considering this is the second time you've shown off a ride-on engine in one of these showcases, you clearly know what you're doing. The final product for this is going to be killer. I can't wait to see what you're cooking up. Next up is Trains for Brains. This is my Mantua 282, or as some of you on the Discord know her, the Mikado of Problems. I've had her for about 7 years now, and it's always had some sort of mechanical issue. For example, the comically large magnet on the back of the motor is necessary for this engine to work, as the original one can't even turn over the motor at all. I'm working on finding a motor replacement right now. On top of that, some smaller problems include one part of the valve gear is mounted on the outside rather than the inside, none of the lights work, and sometimes one side of the valve gear likes to come loose. I'm all for a good project, but when your project becomes a never-ending pain, it kinda takes the fun from it. That said, I still care for this engine, and it is not something I'll be getting rid of anytime soon. All I need is grit, spit, and a whole lot of parts. Look, man, can you really call yourself a model railroader if you don't have at least one never-ending project? Jokes aside there, I really do feel like most people I know have that one problem engine. That one project we always love to death that's just one step left for completion. Then another. Then another. Based on that doodle, though, seems you've got a good plan in mind. Next up is Leelac. My first project to show today is a 3D printed motorized locomotive chassis for G-scale, more specifically FN3. This project is both a test of my CAD design skills and an attempt for an affordable locomotive chassis. All non-3D printed parts here were purchased on Amazon for about $60. Initially, I planned on designing a body as well, but I recently decided to just use the body from a Bachmann Porter side tank that's missing its own chassis. Unfortunately, I messed up a couple of measurements and I'm going to have to reprint this chassis. My second project here is of just a slightly larger scale. After many years of rough planning, I finally made a good friend who cut me a great deal on two 10-foot lengths of rail and two axles for 7.5-inch ride-on gauge. While it's not much at the moment, it will eventually become a very fun little flat car that I hope to get a lifetime of use out of. Wait, for that Jing engine, are you just using double A's to power it? How are you getting away with that? As someone with one of those little Bachmann tank engines, I may need to take notes. Next, we have Calcium Scambell, also known as Callum. During January, I mostly bought a lot of models. I received an Acura scale Andrew Barclay in Caledonian Works for Christmas, bought a lifelike B&O Docksider for spare parts, made a large purchase of a deceased estate from a local in town, bought a Powerline T-Class Series 3 low nose number T383 in Victorian Railways blue and gold, and snagged 8 steam-era models, Victorian Railways, wagon, and coach kits. I've painted the wagons already, but not the coaches yet as I don't have the right color for them. The biggest thing I'd like to show today, quite literally, is my ON30-ish South Australian Railways V-Class 044 in 1950s condition. The model started as a cardboard model, but I plan on changing it to a 3D printed one in the future. V9, the loco I'm modeling, is a big part of my life and my family's history. My great-great-grandfather drove her in the late 1800s, and I've climbed on the loco for as long as I can remember. I hope one day an Australian company makes a proper model of her. Not a bad haul you got there. I do feel like the 044 could use a proper paint job, but I guess you've got some 3D printing to do before that. The model you're currently planning looks pretty nice, and I look forward to seeing what comes of this. Next up is Silver Lake, who has this to share with us today. What I have here is some of the existing pieces of rolling stock from my fictional railway, the Silver Lake and Higu Railway. The line is on a large island called Vagsalia, which I'm still developing the lore and landmass for. The railway first opened as a tram road in the early 1800s and was converted to a conventional rail in the 1850s. Since the beginning, the railroad has always produced its own locomotives, but they never really took well to modern forms of traction that were eventually taken up by various production facilities. There's a lot I could talk about here, but I'll leave it at that for brevity's sake. You know, the photo with the curve track kinda hurts my brain in a weird way. Like, the consistent color of the grass just messes with my depth perception for some reason. I need to get new glasses. Those are some pretty nicely done locomotives for a voxel game like Minecraft. You've got more stories to tell, so what's with the different paint jobs on some of these locomotives? Next, we have Rio Grande Southern Man. I ordered 3,000 pieces of Lego, which happened to be completely unorganized. For every brick I placed, there was no bags, no nothing. I just had to reach in and hope I got the right one. It took me 3 days of building for 12 hours straight each to get all of these models done, but it was worth it. I built 2 Rio Grande Southern Galloping Gooses based on numbers 1 and 3, and some Carolwood Pacific rolling stock, which I hope to buy stickers for someday. The caboose was the hardest to build, as due to a parts error I was missing some of the pieces and had to hunt through my personal collection to make everything work. I rather like the gondolas, since the gondola sides are actually interchangeable for just regular stakes, and you can make a stake flat instead. The boxcars, meanwhile, are very heavy, and to make them run, I had to buy ball-bearing wheel sets. They are pretty expensive, but man are they worth it. Most of my locomotives could pull maybe 1 or 2 cars prior, but with the new wheels, they can pull all of them with ease. I keep forgetting how detailed Lego building can get. I mean, it helps that you're building fairly square things with most trains, but even so, it never fails to amaze me how people make Legos look so natural. Nicely done. For the troubles that caboose gave you, it looks really nice. I like how that turned out. Continuing on, we have the Pain Train. This is my first completed custom steam locomotive for the fictional Progress Lines Railway, later PGR. I got it for a bargain at a train show with the factory lettering already removed, but I still ended up respraying the tender. It also had DCC and sound already installed, which was a plus. It's a Bachmann Alco 260 with a brass CalScale headlight swapped onto it, as I think the one Bachmann gives you looks a little silly. I put a grain of rice LED inside the lamp and drilled a hole in the back to accommodate the wires. I wasn't able to remove the front number plate without damaging the shell, so I found a brass ring that happened to fit around it, which gave the engine a little more of a classy look. I still intend to make some minor modifications to it down the road, but for the time being, I'm quite happy with it. I personally love the way these little moguls look. I actually had one in HO for a while. They're quite cute. I can't believe you've somehow made one look cuter. I know it's mostly just a headlight swap, but that headlight works really well with this engine. If I can ever find my mogul, maybe I need to learn a thing or two from you. Up next is Locopazin. This is my current fixation, the Moordig and Riverbank Railway, a small narrow-gauge line in the south of the United Kingdom connecting the sleepy streets of Moordig to the bustling harbour town of Riverbank. It started off in the 1800s as a slate quarry housing only a single locomotive. Gubin, a green gem Vari 060 kit. Soon, the railroad gained other locomotives such as Number 2, Door, a black and silver double-M model saddle tank. Number 3, Cale Desmond, a green double Fairley kit I'm unaware of origins-wise. Number 4, Bladclot, a green gem Baldwin 1012D kit. Number 5, Martlet, a blue Darjeeling B-Class 040T kit from Mr. Jaj. Number 6, Duke of Retsu, a Hunslet 240 saddle tank kit. And number 7, Wolfgang, a Linston and Barnstaple 262 new build from 2010 canonically. Alongside that is a standard gauge trio up in the riverbank harbor under a preservation society. Everything here is a work in progress, but it's gotten me through the last few months or so, and I like it enough to keep it around. Man, British tanks have so much personality to them. Nice collection you got there. Love the crest design. I feel like people don't make fancy railroad logos enough. I certainly know I don't. Maybe I need to, eh? Up next is NCMT Railroad. Being a New Zealand Railways modeler, there isn't anything ready to run/ready to roll other than repainted Brazilian stuff, so sometimes you have to get a little bit creative. My father happened to have a spare, unused Athearn Blue Box HO 50-foot boxcar underframe with broken couplers sitting around, which the length and sitting height are roughly the same as an SN 3.5 New Zealand Railways UB class flat wagon. We created the sides from styrene strip and cut some styrene sheet for the deck, also scribing the steel plate joints. The underframe trussing and stake pockets were made from L-shaped styrene. The handbrake lever was made from a multitude of scrap from unsuccessful test parts of this build. The main body was repainted before we made the headboards and reassembled the thing with new couplers. The headboards were made of varying sizes of styrene strips and sanded down to get a wood-like grain texture. We changed the plastic wheels out for metal ones and glued the headboards to the wagon. And this was my first successful scratch build, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. Next up will be weathering. Those stake pockets, when I first saw the model, since, I check the photos before reading the commentary while I'm editing these videos, I figured they were just a metal casting or something that you got from a parts company. It's what I usually see here in the States, This model as a whole looks really nice, but those stake pockets especially surprised me. Nicely done. Next is Topaz, who has a couple of things to share with us. The first thing I'd like to show is a narrow gauge engine I've been working on / designing since high school. He was meant for my first idea of a narrow gauge layout called the Sphalerite Railroad, but at this point I'll just say he was bought from an industrial railway. The second thing I'd like to share is my attempt at making a cheap forney for narrow gauge. My lore is that it was made out of spare parts. Last thing to share is of the narrow gauge line's number 1, a 262 tank engine named Stanley. He was found as an abandoned pumping engine outside of a mine. I've shown him with a small scratch-built flat car made of popsicle sticks and a Bachmann N-scale boxcar chassis. One of those popsicle sticks is not like the others. Why is one so girthy? That aside, that's a cute little wood car to start scratch building with. Tinkering seems to be right up your alley, considering all the 3D designs you got there. Looking good. Next, we have a single picture from Fredboy and Friends. I bought a River Rossi J3A Super Hudson back in October, only to find out it had no smoke box door. Since the bulb for the headlight had burned out, I decided to make a tasteful substitute until I could source some replacement parts. In the end, this paper face ended up growing on me, so I'll actually probably keep it. Any ideas people have for possible names to give this guy are welcome. The first thing that came to my mind was not a name, but a caption. Fat Gordon stubs his toe. I don't know, that's just what this face screams to me. If I had to pitch a name, I think I'd throw Mason into the ring. Just feels right to me, I guess. Next up is LMR Trains. These are my two K-class locomotives in HON3. K36 number 484, which I had to do tons of work on, the worst of which being a whole remotor and repaint. Then there's 464, the Leadwater Choo-Choo herself. The only thing I had to do for her was clean up the contacts and the wheels. Both of these are brass engines. I love the way the K-Class locomotives look. I might actually get to ride behind one sometime soon. If only they weren't so hard to get in HON3. You lucky dog. Quick question for a friend, TM. What kind of track is that? Is it Blackstone? Up next, we have Cryptogore. Allow me to introduce you to the people of the Twisted Metal Railroad. What started out as some good old boys running a scrap/salvage yard has managed to turn into a small short-line railroad. Smashing their heads together has brought forward a plethora of stuff, to put it kindly. Taking components from scrapped rolling stock, they build engines and cars for their line. These photos are but some of their creations. Lore aside, most of these are 3D printed, but some of them are kit-boshed. The 3D printed ones I modify quite a bit for my own needs, whether it be rescaling, altering, or bashing them with other designs. The shelves are some scrap aluminum I found at work and made some brackets for. Of the 3 F3s in different scales, I hope to paint up the HO and O ones in that hot rod styling for the 2 trains of screenshots that I've included. The exhaust and the intakes might be a little tricky to do, but I've got a 3D printer. Man, is this episode just, hey, Stir, you need to buy a 3D printer of some kind? Because that's what I'm feeling right now. These look great. I'm a little curious about the boxcar with an open platform. How'd you make that? I think it would be fun to emphasize it more as a caboose by adding some windows, at least assuming it's supposed to be a caboose. Next is a small layout from Cab Car 82 Productions, aka Corbin. This is my current plywood and Pacific layout that I plan on doing a lot with this 2025. The first thing that I have done is buy newer, wider curves for the cork roadbed that I got for Christmas. I plan on making this layout Washington/Oregon based with heavy forests, but I also want to maybe make a small coastal town on the left side of the layout where the road and the station are. The area with the little jut out of the table with a coaling tower and siding, I plan on turning into a small staging yard area that connects into the main line in either a Y or a series of switches. The rest of the track plan will likely stay the same with the double loop mainline and maybe adding on an industry or two here and there. Currently, I have a pretty decent roster of locomotives for the layout, which, if you couldn't tell, I love Burlington Northern and Southern Pacific. I would like to learn to kitbosh and potentially 3D print my own models someday because I would love to make logging Mikado similar to that of Polson No. 2 or Crosset Western No. 10. I do still need to think up of a name for this route and am open to suggestions if you have any. Hopefully soon I can put some layout update videos on YouTube, as your channel, along with a few others, have actually inspired me to get to working on this rather than just leaving it as the Junk Mountain Railroad. You know, as somebody in the Portland, Oregon region, the 4449 has definitely made me a little bit biased for the Southern Pacific. I love that wall. That is a killer collection. I'm glad to hear that I've helped to inspire you. It's kind of my main goal with this channel, and I love seeing these early progress reports on people's layouts. There's just something charming about the plywood in Pacific, you know? Sure, finished layouts are fun, but so is just playing with trains. Next is Pressy Guy. I went down to a fairly new model railway shop and saw these HO wagons in an old cabinet and bought them for £40. When I got home and picked up one of the brake vans, the truck just fell off and onto the floor. Fortunately, it just seems to have happened because the screw was loose, so I was able to fix it pretty easily. As my first US rolling stock, I think I got a good deal on them. I plan to weather the boxcar and brake vans. Having a car fall apart as soon as you get back from the store is a perfect single-sentence horror story for most model railroaders. As someone who has not been so fortunate on this front recently, I'm very glad to hear for you it was just a loose screw. This next submission is a short and sweet uncredited one where all the submitter had to say was just some art I finished in the past few weeks. Now, mind you, submissions were open in January, so it's been a bit more than a few weeks now, but just some art? Are you kidding me? This is fun! I especially love the shading you've done on these pieces. That was 1/4 of our submissions, 20 out of 80. If you haven't seen your submission yet, don't worry, there's only one video left before we're done. We'll be back in a few weeks to finally put this set of submissions to rest. Once again, thank you to DD, RPG, and KDS for the contributions towards the showcase. Thank you to everyone who submitted something for us to show off, and thank you for watching. Cheers, folks.